Oh yeah, that's very true. I mean, culture is very much a part of geography in terms of safety, right? You need a safe place to live, and a safe place to live means you find usually a flat area of land, and then you build castles on the hills around about to warn you about anyone who's coming into the area. So you do see that. I mean, look at the border between Slovakia and Poland is mountains.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's quite a clear example. So there are um, there are lots of geographical reasons, and also at the same time, there's a lot of examples which show this not to be true. For example, in Africa, where if you look at a lot of the African countries, they were very much divided up by European nations following the Second World War, and that's why you find straight lines. Wherever you've got a straight line as a border, it's
Yes.
obviously been created by somebody who has no idea of what
Mhm,
is
mhm,
of the geography that's
mhm,
there, because nature doesn't have straight
mhm,
lines
mhm.
really. Yeah, there's well, natural borders are mountains, rivers, and seas, basically. These are the natural borders that exist. So um, it's understandable, but at the same time as there are natural borders, there are a lot of arbitrary,
Mhm,
unnatural lines that exist. Take Slovakia. Like you can walk over the border into the
mhm.
Czech Republic, and there's basically no difference. It's the same
Yeah.
with with Austria, where the border should be the river, right?
Yes, but it's not.
But it's not. Yeah, exactly. It's not,
Mm,
and that's because of the problems that exist. Because where there's a river, you build bridges, and where you build bridges, cities grow up. Cities come from bridges, basically. Because wherever you cross the river, everybody has to cross the river at the same point, and that's where all towns come from the
mhm,
construction
mhm,
of bridges, basically. Um, and because then you build the bridge, and then everybody has to travel through there. So then you have a market, and because you have a market, you have trade. Then you have to regulate the trade, and then you need services to serve the trade and regulate the trade. And so towns, especially in this part of the world, definitely grow from having bridges.
mhm, mhm.
So wherever you see a town is because somebody at some point built a bridge over the river. Now that bridge might be logical. It might be in a logical place, or it might be in a crazy place,
Yes.
because it might be that it's just natural for somebody to do that thing there. And bridges were also all bridges originally were toll bridges. You had to pay to cross the bridges. Whoever built the bridges then charged people money to
Mhm,
cross the bridges. And uh, so that was again commerce, and then the people built roads to link the bridges together, and then you had this whole sort of network system developing, and it was very much very, very simplified until the industrial era created trains first, and then cars and private transportation, and other things, which meant that
mhm,
people traveled further, faster, and that sort of meant that the bridges often became less important in that era. But you can still see the old. If you look at old maps, right, like Buda and Pest, right? Buda and
yes.
Pest became Budapest because
Mhm, mhm.
one city was on one side of the river
And
and the other
do
city
you
was on the
do,
other.
do you know the bridges of Budapest was built in Slovakia?
I didn't know that. No, I didn't
Yes,
know
yes.
that.
In somewhere in Gemer, it's the area.
It was the Austro-Hungarian Empire,
Mhm, mhm,
uh, which was a region of what was previously the Roman Empire.
mhm, mhm,
So it was a division of that, and these regions were were constantly changing as well. The borders were constantly moving. People were always trying to increase the land that they owned.
And I read some article about London. There is one uh, side and the second side. The London is mm, is hard is splitted by the river to
Yes.
rich part and not so rich part. I think something like this I read.
Well, historically, yes. Historically, historically North London was richer than South London. I'm not exactly sure why. There might be a lot of logical reasons for this, that the North is always seen as more dominant than the South, just because we think of the head being at the top of things. Also, the government and parliament buildings are on the north sides of the river, so that's important. The financial district is on the north side of the river, so all of these elements are important. Traditionally the south of London was more mixed and poorer, and the rich people lived further north. Famous places in London like Hampstead Heath or Muswell Hill are where people with money want to live, because you can. In fact, the rich places are the places where there's no underground system. It's interesting because there's just the general people live and travel, through the underground system in London, which is quite practical. But the places where the rich people live, you usually can't access the underground there. It gives them a bit more privacy, and it means less people go to those.
How they travel?
But by their own private transport, by car,
Yes.
usually, I imagine. What else? There were other problems with London. There were these historical problems with England, because a lot of England, and this is not well known, and I discovered this by accident, that a lot of England was wet land. It was wet, and it made it very difficult to build anything. Now, this is very true in London. In East London, there's not a lot of construction in East London because there's too much water in the land to actually build anything. In fact, there's a place called Hackney Marshes, and a marsh is an area of wet land, and it's a whole region of the northeast of London called Hackney Marshes, where you can't build anything because the ground is not strong enough to construct there. And also, if you go, so imagine London, and then you go west, where it's very large areas of flat land or west of London. Places like Salisbury Plain, which is Stonehenge, the big old stones. All those areas were, in history, go back 500, 600 years. That area of England was small islands connected by boats. You couldn't actually travel on boats across it. It was all wet land. And the scientists and engineers of the time, they actually, this is amazing, they designed an engineering project to dry the lands of England so that they could be so if we see it today, it's all flat land and it's all dry, and there are lots of towns and villages there. But in the past, it was all small islands surrounded by water, which is where we get a lot of these historical stories and legends, because it was difficult to travel in and around that area of England. It's considered to be a very magical area because of all of these historical stories. You've got the Arthurian legends, the legends of King Arthur, and you got the Druids, and also Celtic history as well in that area. So So it's interesting there, and and London has constantly changed as well because following the Second World War, a lot of London was destroyed and it got rebuilt, and you can see the modern pictures of London, and you can see how it's been constructed and reconstructed, and there are some special areas of London that you can go and visit because they're still designed in the old style of how things used to be there. But what you said is true. It's very much divided by the river going through the middle. Not only that, one of the best ways to travel around London and England is actually on the canals. These were water channels that were built to carry boats before public transportation, and this again was a project about 150 years ago, where obviously transportation was seen as very important. England was a very wet country. Building roads was difficult. So what they did was they built waterways. They built these canals. And these canals go all throughout England. And you can travel by boat. You can go through London. You can go on the canals through London. And it's really interesting because you travel through the market areas, and you travel through business areas. One of the canals goes through, I think it goes through London Zoo. Right? The canal actually goes through London Zoo.
The cities looks different from water.
Oh yeah, it does, because the canal is hidden.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it really is a different perspective. If you look at here's just a classic image from London of how the canal looks.
I never heard about this. It's great.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at things, because I lived in London for 5 years, and I lived near some of the canals, and you don't think about it much when you live there, right? Because your focus is on other things, but it's some people live there. Some people live on the canals. They have boats, and they live on the boats on the canals.
Yes, houseboats.
Yeah, it's a great way to walk, actually, to walk along the canals. It's a very nice walk. There's and what people forget about London is that everything is actually really close. They think that London is this big, massive metropolis, like, I don't know, like New York City or Rio de Janeiro or something. It's not.
Yes, it's true.
London is still relatively small. It might have twice as many people as Slovakia, but it's still a relatively small city in world terms, right? I mean, you've got these Chinese cities with 40 to 50 million people, right? So having 11 million people is still relatively small. And I sort of forgot what I wanted to say about the number of people. Anyway, no, it's okay. So there's these. So you can see in the second picture, what you can see is these locks, these canal locks that were built to move the level of water. And I was talking about things being close together. So